I never thought I would witness someone get arrested over expired coupons, but here we are. My name is Sarah, and I have been living in Meadowbrook Heights for about 3 years now. It is one of those suburbs where everyone knows everyone, and the lawns are always perfectly manicured. I moved here after selling my software security consulting firm, looking for a quiet place to work remotely on some passion projects, and maybe do some angel investing on the side. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first: peaceful streets, good schools nearby, and a community pool. What I did not account for was Karen Hutchins, our HOA president, who treated her position like she was running a small dictatorship. Karen was not just your average HOA president. She was the type who would drive around the neighborhood 3 times a day looking for violations. Her white SUV was like a patrol car, and she had a clipboard that never left her side. I first met her during my second week in the neighborhood when she knocked on my door at 7:30 in the morning to inform me that my mailbox was 0.5 inches too far from the curb according to the HOA guidelines. Not 5 inches. 0.5 inches. She had actually gotten down on her hands and knees with a tape measure. Before we continue with this absolutely wild story, if you are enjoying this tale of HOA madness, please hit that like button and subscribe to KarenEatWorld. Trust me, you will want to be here for more stories like this one. Now, back to Karen and her tape measure. From that moment on, Karen made it her personal mission to make my life difficult. Every week there was a new violation notice. My trash cans were visible from the street for more than 2 hours after pickup. My garden gnome was not on the approved decorative items list. My car was parked facing the wrong direction in my own driveway overnight. Yes, apparently there is a correct direction to park in your own driveway, and I was doing it wrong. Each violation came with a $50 fine, and Karen would hand-deliver them with this smug smile on her face, like she had just solved a murder case. The thing about Karen was that she did not enforce these rules equally. Her best friend Monica could have pink flamingos all over her lawn, but my single garden gnome was a neighborhood crisis. The retired judge 3 doors down could park his RV on his driveway for months, but my overnight guest parking was an emergency HOA meeting topic. I tried the reasonable approach first. I went to HOA meetings. I tried to discuss the inconsistent enforcement. I even brought documentation showing how she was selectively applying rules. Karen would just smile, shuffle her papers, and say that as president, she had discretion in enforcement matters. Things escalated when I decided to install solar panels on my roof. I had done my research, gotten all the proper permits from the city, and even checked that nothing in the HOA bylaws specifically prohibited them. The installation company was top-rated, and the panels were sleek and black to match my roof. I thought I had covered all my bases. I was wrong. The day after installation, Karen was at my door with a cease and desist letter she had apparently paid her lawyer cousin to write up. According to her interpretation of the vague aesthetic standards clause, my solar panels created visual disharmony with the neighborhood character. I tried explaining that solar panels were protected under state law, that HOAs could not prohibit them. Karen did not care about state law. She cared about her interpretation of neighborhood character. She filed a formal complaint, called an emergency HOA meeting, and started a phone tree to get other residents riled up about my solar panels. Most of my neighbors did not actually care, but Karen was persistent. She showed up at my house twice a day to take photos of my roof from different angles. She sent me certified letters weekly. She even tried to put a lien on my property. That is when I decided to dig into who Karen Hutchins really was. See, one of the benefits of having run a security consulting firm is that you develop certain skills and connections. You learn how to find information, how to verify facts, and how to see patterns that others miss. I was not looking to invade her privacy, but if she was going to weaponize bureaucracy against me, I needed to understand what I was dealing with. What I found was fascinating. Karen was not just obsessive about HOA rules in our neighborhood. She had a history. Before Meadowbrook Heights, Karen had lived in 3 other HOA communities. In each one, she had worked her way up to board positions, and in each one, she had eventually been forced out after disputes with neighbors that escalated to legal threats. She was a serial HOA tyrant, moving from neighborhood to neighborhood, leaving chaos in her wake. But there was something else I discovered that was even more interesting. Karen had a pattern of behavior that extended beyond HOAs. She was a serial complainer everywhere she went. I found online reviews she had left for dozens of businesses. Restaurants, grocery stores, hair salons, coffee shops. In every single review, Karen had complained about something and demanded compensation. She had written a 1-star review for a bakery because they would not accept her expired coupon. She had left a scathing review for a veterinarian because they would not give her a discount for bringing in her 3 cats at once. She had filed complaints with corporate offices of at least 15 different retail chains. Karen was not just a difficult neighbor. She was a difficult person everywhere she went. The grocery store complaints were particularly interesting. Karen shopped at the same Whole Foods every week, and she had a system. She would buy items, use them, and then return them claiming they were defective to get her money back. She would bring in expired coupons and demand managers honor them, claiming she had received them that week. She would price match items from other stores using photos she had clearly edited on her phone. The store had a file on her. I knew this because I happened to be friendly with the regional manager, David, who I had met at a charity fundraiser 6 months earlier. David and I had stayed in touch, and when I casually mentioned my HOA president shopped at his store and seemed like quite the character, he knew exactly who I was talking about. Apparently, Karen was infamous among the staff. They had to implement a special protocol when she came in because she was so disruptive. She would block aisles while she examined every item with a magnifying glass looking for defects. She would argue with cashiers about prices even when the register was clearly correct. She would demand to speak to managers about the temperature of the store, the music selection, the way products were arranged on shelves. If you are sitting there thinking this woman sounds absolutely exhausting, smash that like button because, it gets so much better. And do not forget to subscribe, so you do not miss what happens next. But here is where Karen made her critical mistake. In her endless quest to nickel and dime everywhere she went, she had started doing something that crossed from annoying into illegal. She had begun making her own coupons. David explained to me that they had noticed it a few months ago. Karen would come in with coupons that looked legitimate at first glance, but did not match anything in their system. When staff looked closer, they could see they were poorly photoshopped versions of real coupons, with the expiration dates changed and the discount amounts increased. The first few times it happened, they just declined the coupons and Karen would make a scene, but eventually leave. But she kept coming back with more fake coupons, each time acting outraged when they would not accept them. She would threaten to call corporate, threaten to leave bad reviews, threaten to take her business elsewhere. The thing is, coupon fraud is not just a store policy violation. It is actual fraud. It is a crime. And Karen had been doing it for months, becoming more brazen each time. David told me they had been documenting everything, keeping copies of the fake coupons, saving security footage of her transactions. They had reported it to corporate, and corporate had told them to continue documenting until they had an airtight case, and then they would involve law enforcement. They wanted to make sure they had enough evidence that there would be no question about what was happening. Karen had no idea she was building her own criminal case against herself, one fake coupon at a time. I did not have to do anything. I just had to wait. But I will admit, I may have encouraged David to ensure his staff was being especially thorough in their documentation. I may have mentioned that Karen had a history of this behavior at other stores too, which prompted corporate to reach out to other chains where she had left bad reviews about coupon disputes. Turns out, Karen had been running this same scam at multiple stores across the county. What she thought was a clever way to save money on groceries was actually a multi-store fraud operation. The week it all came together was the same week Karen decided to escalate her campaign against my solar panels. She had managed to get the HOA board to vote on fining me $100 per day until I removed them, despite this being clearly illegal under state law. She hand-delivered the notice herself, standing on my porch with that smug smile, explaining that I could avoid all these fines by just being a team player and taking down the panels. She told me some people just were not cut out for HOA living, and maybe I should consider moving somewhere with less standards. I smiled and told her I would see her around the neighborhood. She had no idea what was coming. That Saturday morning, Karen went on her usual grocery shopping trip to Whole Foods. She had her reusable bags, her list, and her folder full of fake coupons that she had spent the previous evening creating. Security footage later showed her shopping methodically through the store, checking prices, examining produce with her magnifying glass, and generally being her usual difficult self. When she got to the checkout lane, she had a cart full of organic groceries, premium items, the works. The total came to over $300. Then Karen pulled out her folder of coupons. She had coupons for almost every item in her cart, each one carefully edited to show massive discounts and current dates despite being expired or completely fabricated. The cashier, a young guy named Marcus, who had been thoroughly briefed on the protocol, began scanning them. One by one, each coupon was declined by the system. Marcus explained politely that the coupons were not valid. Karen immediately launched into her usual routine, demanding a manager, insisting the coupons were legitimate, raising her voice about customer service. The assistant manager came over, a woman named Patricia, who had dealt with Karen many times before. Patricia examined the coupons and calmly explained that they appeared to be fraudulent and the store could not accept them. Karen went nuclear. She started yelling about discrimination, about how she had been shopping there for years, about how she was going to call corporate and the news and her lawyer. Other customers were stopping to watch. Karen was blocking the checkout lane, refusing to move, demanding they honor her fake coupons. She pulled out her phone and started recording, claiming she was being persecuted. That is when David, the regional manager, came out from his office in the back. David had been waiting for this moment. He had been alerted the second Karen entered the store that morning. He walked up calmly, introduced himself, and asked Karen to step aside so they could discuss this privately. Karen refused. She wanted everyone to see how she was being treated. She wanted witnesses to this injustice. So David gave her one more chance to handle this quietly, and when she refused again, he did what corporate had authorized him to do. He called the police. Karen laughed. She actually laughed and said good. She wanted police there to see how she was being discriminated against. She had no idea that David was not calling the police to remove a disruptive customer. He was calling them to report a crime. Within 10 minutes, 2 police officers arrived. Karen immediately started trying to take control of the situation, talking about how she was being harassed, how the store was refusing to honor valid coupons, how this was all a misunderstanding. The officers let her talk. Then David explained the situation. He showed them the folder of obviously fake coupons Karen had tried to use. He showed them on his tablet the documentation they had been keeping for months. He showed them examples of previous fake coupons she had used successfully before they caught on to her scheme. He explained that this was not an isolated incident, but an ongoing pattern of fraud. The officers examined the evidence, and their demeanor completely changed. They asked Karen if the coupons were hers. She said yes, insisting they were real. They asked if she had created them. She hesitated, then said she had printed them from the internet, which was technically true but also an admission. They asked if she understood that using fraudulent coupons to obtain merchandise was a crime. Karen insisted she had not done anything wrong, that coupons were meant to be used, that this was all a misunderstanding. The officers looked at each other, and then one of them said the words that made the entire store go silent. Okay, before I tell you what happened next, if you are loving this story of instant karma, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You need to be here for more stories like this. Trust me. Now, let us get to the good part. Ma'am, you are under arrest for retail fraud. Karen's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, fear, and then back to anger. She started arguing, saying they could not arrest her over coupons, that this was insane, that she wanted to speak to their supervisor. The officer patiently explained that creating and using counterfeit coupons to fraudulently obtain merchandise was indeed a crime, and based on the evidence provided by the store, they had probable cause to arrest her. As the officer began to explain her rights, Karen tried to bolt. She actually tried to run out of the store. The second officer caught her before she made it past the end of the checkout lane. That is when Karen really lost it. She started screaming, flailing, knocking over a display of organic energy bars. Other shoppers were recording on their phones now. The entire scene was being captured from multiple angles. The officers managed to get handcuffs on her while she shouted about police brutality and false arrest, and how her lawyer was going to sue everyone. David calmly handed the officers a folder containing copies of all the fraudulent coupons, transaction records, security footage timestamps, and documentation of the months-long pattern of behavior. He also mentioned that corporate had been in touch with several other retailers who had experienced similar issues with the same individual, and they would be interested in coordinating with the police investigation. Karen's eyes went wide when she heard that. I think that was the moment she realized this was not just about today's shopping trip. As they escorted her out of the store in handcuffs, past a crowd of customers with their phones out, past the organic produce section where she had spent countless hours examining avocados with her magnifying glass, Karen was still yelling. She was yelling about her rights, about how everyone would pay for this, about how she was going to own that store when her lawsuit was done. The automatic doors closed behind her, and the store erupted in applause. Actual applause. The staff looked relieved. The customers looked entertained. And David looked satisfied. I heard about all of this from David, who called me that afternoon. He thought I would appreciate knowing that my HOA president had just been arrested. But the story gets better. Because Karen's arrest was not just a personal embarrassment. It had professional consequences. See, in our HOA bylaws, there was a clause about board members. They had to maintain good standing in the community. Criminal charges were grounds for immediate removal from the board pending the outcome of the case. I printed out a copy of the arrest report, which was public record, and brought it to the next HOA meeting. I did not even have to say much. I simply submitted it as evidence under the good standing clause and moved to have Karen temporarily removed from her position as president until her legal matters were resolved. The look on her face was priceless. She tried to argue, but the other board members, who had been quietly tired of her tyranny for years, voted unanimously to suspend her. But wait, it gets even better. Because once Karen was suspended, I was able to bring motions to the board that had been impossible before. Like the motion to invalidate all selective enforcement of rules. Like the motion to void fines that had been issued inconsistently. Like the motion to clarify that solar panels were explicitly allowed under state law and the HOA could not prohibit them. Without Karen there to block everything, the board was suddenly reasonable. All my motions passed. Karen's legal situation got worse. The county prosecutor, it turns out, took coupon fraud seriously, especially when it was a pattern across multiple retailers. Karen was charged with multiple counts of retail fraud, forgery, and uttering and publishing. Her court dates kept getting continued as more stores came forward with evidence. Her lawyer bills were piling up. She had to get a public defender eventually because she could not afford private counsel for a case this complex. Meanwhile, I did some more digging into Karen's background. Remember how I mentioned she had been forced out of previous HOA communities? Well, those were not just personality conflicts. In 2 of those cases, there had been allegations of financial impropriety. Money that went missing from HOA accounts. Dues that were not properly documented. I brought this information to our HOA board as well, suggesting we might want to do a full audit of the finances during Karen's tenure as president. The audit revealed that Karen had been using HOA funds for personal expenses. Nothing huge, but consistent small amounts. Reimbursing herself for gas to drive around looking for violations. Charging meals as HOA meeting expenses when there were no meetings. Using the HOA credit card for office supplies that ended up at her house. It was enough to refer to the county prosecutor, who added embezzlement charges to her growing list of legal problems. Karen tried to fight back. She hired a lawyer to sue me personally for defamation, claiming I had orchestrated her arrest. The lawsuit was frivolous and was dismissed within a month. She tried to claim the HOA audit was retaliation and illegal. That went nowhere. She tried to get her position back by claiming the good standing clause was discriminatory. The court disagreed. Every move she made to fight back just made things worse for her. The best part came about 6 months later. Karen's criminal trial was a disaster for her. The prosecution had security footage from 4 different stores showing her using fake coupons. They had the physical coupons themselves with their fingerprints on them. They had testimony from store employees. They had digital forensics showing the coupons had been created on her home computer. Her defense was essentially that she did not know it was illegal, which is not actually a defense. She was convicted on multiple counts. The judge, clearly unimpressed with her behavior throughout the trial, gave her the maximum sentence allowed. 90 days in jail, 3 years probation, restitution to all the affected stores, community service, and a ban from the stores where she had committed fraud. The restitution alone was over $15,000 because they calculated not just what she had stolen with fake coupons, but the staff time and resources spent dealing with her behavior. But here is the final twist that made everything perfect. As part of her probation, Karen was required to attend a course on ethical behavior and community responsibility. The course met twice a week for 6 months. And where did it meet? In the community center in our neighborhood. The same community center where HOA meetings were held. So twice a week, Karen had to walk past the HOA meeting room, where she used to rule with an iron fist, to attend a class about not being a terrible person. I saw her there once. I was at the community center dropping off some documents for the new HOA president, a retired teacher named Margaret, who actually believed in reasonable rule enforcement and community building. Karen was walking into her ethics class, and our eyes met for just a second. The look on her face was everything I needed to see. It was not anger anymore. It was not defiance. It was defeat. It was the face of someone who finally understood that her petty tyranny had caught up with her. She had lost her position as HOA president. She had a criminal record. She owed thousands in restitution. She had jail time on her record. She was banned from her favorite stores. And all of it, every single consequence, had come from her own actions. Her fake coupons, her selective rule enforcement, her financial impropriety, her refusal to handle things quietly when given the chance. She had built the case against herself, and I had just made sure the right people knew about it. The solar panels on my roof still gleam in the sunshine every day. My garden gnome is back in my front yard, and I added 3 more just because I can. I park my car whichever direction I want in my own driveway. And every HOA meeting under the new president starts with a reminder that rules exist to build community, not to enable petty tyrants. Karen still lives in the neighborhood, but she keeps to herself now. Her white SUV does not patrol the streets anymore. Her clipboard stays at home. And whenever she sees me, she looks the other way. Sometimes karma needs a little help. Sometimes justice needs someone who knows how to connect the dots and make sure the right information gets to the right people. And sometimes, the best revenge is just letting someone's own behavior catch up with them, while you make sure there is no place left to hide from the consequences. Karen wanted to control everything. Now, she cannot even control where she is allowed to shop. And that is what I call poetic justice. If you enjoyed this absolutely wild tale of HOA karma and grocery store justice, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to KarenEatWorld for more unbelievable stories. Drop a comment below telling me about your worst HOA or Karen encounter. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next story.